Now let's get up close and personal with the power of out-of-home with Publicis Media Senior Vice President and Director of Research. Please welcome Helen Katz.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for having me here. And for any of you who are confused by the introduction and my title, in the fast world of agencies, we restructured, and now Starcom Media Invest Group is part of Publicis Media, so I sort of have two hats. But I'm here to talk to you now about the power of out-of-home from an agency perspective, and share with you some of the research findings that we did for an analysis just for today. And because I'm from a research group, I have to start with a few facts and figures and numbers. And in the past 5 years, SMG's spending in out-of-home has doubled, which is a great thing for everybody out here, and shows, I think, the power and increasing power of the medium. Our sibling agency, Zenith, which provides quarterly ad expenditure forecasts for the industry, has predicted a steady growth of 3% in the US for the next several years, and I think that's similar to what we heard yesterday. And of course, digital out-of-home is a huge growth area for us and for the industry, with a 36% increase forecast by eMarketer. So the question that I was asked to address today is, how does out-of-home fit within an agency's media plans and buys? And for us, as Dennis just mentioned, similarly for us, everything starts with the consumer. And for our agency, that means our PACE panel. So PACE is a global audience knowledge platform. It's a large database and based on a survey that gives us really rich insights about consumers' lives so that we can connect our brands with those lives, with the pace and purpose of people's lives. It's developed in conjunction with Reality Mine, a research and software company. And it's a single source set of data and platform, but it's fused to industry currencies such as GfK MRI, which allows us to expand the scope and go broader and deeper into the data set. It's also, for SMG, on a proprietary basis, it's a global panel, so we've executed it in multiple markets, which allows us for our global brands to be globally consistent and also locally relevant. So it's really giving us important context for placing our messages and our branded content to reach people with relevant messages at the moments when they're more likely to be receptive to them, when they're going through the consumer journey and thinking about buying a product or deciding which brand to buy or actually making the purchase, and allowing us to do that as close to the point of purchase as possible. So as I said, our PACE panel uses Reality Mine's Touchpoints data. So Touchpoints is a syndicated US product that we have customized and created a proprietary version. So that's a mobile e-diary with an opt-in panel of 5,000 consumers in the US. And it's allowing us to measure with the consumers, their behavior and their media activity on a half-hour by half-hour basis. So they agree to opt in, and they carry this app on their phone, which they respond to every half hour. What it allows us to do is create a day in the life of our consumer targets for whichever brand we're focused on. And in particular, what we're looking for is receptivity moments. Those moments, as I said, when people will be more likely to be responsive to our brand messaging. We can also look at the time people are spending across different media and across activities. So what we do, or what the consumers are really doing, is they're providing data on where they are, their location, what they're doing, their activities at that particular moment, how they're feeling, what emotion or mood they're feeling at that time, the social setting they're in, who they're with, if anybody, and of course, importantly, what media they are using at the moment when they're responding on the app. So as I said, this PACE panel gives us a better understanding of the target and the moments of receptivity. We can deep dive into our target behaviors, regardless, depending on who the target is, throughout the day and across days by day of week. We can look at the context of category opportunities, so we can look at specific categories or brands, and again, look for those moments that people are more likely to be receptive. And we can find the key media platforms and properties to reach them at that moment when they will be more receptive. Just a note about the purchase journey. So we're looking at the path to purchase from beginning to end, and we consider the journey to sort of have 3 phases. The consideration when you're really just thinking about making a purchase, the decision when you're trying to decide, you've narrowed it down to a few brands, and of course the actual purchase in store. So what I'm going to share with you today is an analysis that we did using the PACE data that looks at the relationship of consumers' purchase journeys across different categories to their exposure to out-of-home, adding in what we think is a really important emotional layer. I'll then make some comparisons of out-of-home with this emotional layer to other media, and then I'll end by giving you a few examples of the real-world applications of the PACE insights from our agency. So first of all, what I looked at was how associated or related media exposure is to the purchase journey. So I looked at exposure 30 minutes prior to some kind of purchase activity. And what you can see here is that out-of-home has the strongest correlation to that purchase journey of any media type, broadly defined. So on a scale of 0 to 1, the correlation for out-of-home is 0.96. Right behind that is digital or internet, search, social. But out-of-home is very strong in being correlated to the purchase journey, which makes sense because it's often closest to the point of purchase. But when we break it down by category, we see that out-of-home continues to have the highest or equally high correlation to that purchase journey. And here what we can see is for auto, for fast food, for groceries, and for health, for home and garden, out-of-home continues to have the highest correlation to that purchase activity. As I mentioned, for us, media is more than just about exposure, it's also about emotion. So we want to find consumers during the purchase journey through media that have some alignment with how they're feeling at the time to develop and create those moments of greater receptivity. So we can identify through PACE the critical moments and moods along the consumer journey to purchase, and it does vary by category. So if we look at here, at the top line, you can see that in the grocery category, the day when people are most likely to think about buying groceries is on a Wednesday. The day they're actually more likely to go to the store and buy the groceries is Saturday. The mood that they're most likely to have when they're thinking about grocery buying, not surprisingly, is one of hunger. But when they're actually in the store and buying groceries, the mood that they're most likely to have is feeling overwhelmed and stressed because, you know, it's probably one of 10 chores you want to get done, and it can be quite stressful. So we can do this for different categories, and the other one I'll highlight, because I think it's pretty interesting, is the banking and finance. So along the bottom here, we can see the day when people are most likely to think about buying or taking some kind of action in the financial and banking category is a Tuesday. The day they're most likely to do that is a Thursday. The mood associated with thinking about financial and banking activity is sort of split. Some people are more likely to be relieved because it may be something they've been knowing that they need to do, and now they're finally really seriously thinking about it. And then the opposite end of the spectrum, there's also a mood of anger, because who likes dealing with banking and finance? But when people are actually making the transaction or getting the IRA or changing to a new bank account, the highest mood associated with that purchase activity is one of indifference. It's probably, I think it's probably because you're finally doing it, it's no fun, and you're just getting it done and want it out of the way. But you can see that mood and category can have important implications for how and where we message to our consumers. So when we go deeper, particularly for out-of-home, when we can look for opportunities to reach consumers by category-specific purchase journeys based on their emotional state. And I was told that you love data, so excuse, the next set of slides is full of data. So breaking this down, if we look at the chart on the left here, the financial banking purchase journey, which is the blue line that's tracking throughout the day. And then the orange bars you can see is when people are exposed to out-of-home and feeling overwhelmed and stressed, which seemed, again, the right kind of emotion for that category. And opportunities are shown in the green circle area in that sort of afternoon period where it would be great to place some kind of a reassuring message, because we know people are exposed to out of home, they're feeling somewhat overwhelmed or stressed, and they're in that path to purchase. So there's an opportunity to place a reassuring message. The second example here is for fashion and apparel. And here you can again see the purchase journey throughout the day. Out-of-home exposure when confident or happy, because I would feel that when you're making a purchase in that category, that's the mood you're more likely to have. And the great opportunity there is here for positive messaging in that particular category, using out-of-home in those late afternoon hours when people are more likely to be exposed to out-of-home and in that mindset. A couple of other examples that I pulled up. In the home and garden category, again, the purchase journey goes throughout the day in the blue line. And when people are exposed to out of home and feeling contented or hopeful, there's a nice opportunity, again, in that sort of early afternoon time period to place a positive brand message for any particular home or garden brand in that category, using outdoor. And lastly, on the one at the end on the fast food purchase, you can see the purchase journey spikes around lunchtime, and then again a slightly smaller spike in the dinner hour, which makes sense. And the out-of-home exposure when hungry or thirsty tracks pretty closely to that. But a perfect opportunity for a reminder messaging in outdoor in that dinner time hour when people are exposed to out-of-home, hungry and thirsty, and thinking or making some kind of fast food purchase. So there's lots of ways to really mine this kind of data to see how out-of-home can be matched with and take advantage of the consumer mindset to look for those moments of receptivity for our brands. We also, through PACE, can break down the purchase journey and look specifically at whether it's consideration, decision-making, or actual purchase. And we can also do this across media types. So here, again, going back to home and garden, we can break it down between considering making a purchase in that category and actually making a purchase. And when you're in the consideration phase of that category, you can look at the different media types: out of home, feeling hopeful and contented; social, hopeful and contented; and TV, hopeful and contented. And they all track pretty similarly, really, in terms of the shapes of those bars. But when you get to actual making a purchase in that category, and I'm pretty sure that's driven by, if I broke it down by weekday versus weekend, that looks like a weekend spike when everyone's got time on weekends to go to the store, go to the home and garden stores. You can see there's a nice opportunity, again, right when people are making the purchase in that category, to have a real influence on that purchase and maybe, convert it from a consideration to an actual purchase when people are feeling contented and hopeful and exposed to out of home. So what I'd like to do is share with you a couple of real-world PACE examples from our agency. And the first one was done in the UK, and it was for a grocery product. And the challenge was to identify micro moments in the week that could inform the media schedule. And they knew that the campaign was going live on a Monday, which they had discovered as was the biggest worry day of the week. So they could use out-of-home, and specifically this was digital out-of-home, because it allowed them to react to external events and to sort of provide reassuring and positive messages on a day when, or at times when, people were more likely to be worried or sad. And given that this is the UK and the weather is pretty awful, the great opportunity there to change the messaging and provide a more positive one on those kinds of moments. In the US, for a casual dining restaurant, they wanted to find the time of day when consumers would be receptive to the message in the right media channels with a certain kind of emotion, and the emotion, not surprisingly, was hunger. And they could see that there were lots of media opportunities to reach people, but again, the idea was while other media could reach them at the right time of day or at the right, in the right location, what out of home really provided was the opportunity in that 4 p.m. hour when people were in the car and feeling hungry, that they could reach them as they were considering dining options for that evening. So again, combining mood and medium. A few more examples of how PACE can be utilized with out of home to really provide a more powerful message and connect with our consumers. So we can reach them with either billboards or digital messaging to when they're worried or stressed and provide reassurance. So, you know, if it's snowing and you see a Walmart, you can reach people, reduce their stress by reminding them that Walmart has all the snow equipment and supplies that they will need. If you're stuck on the New Jersey Turnpike, stuck in traffic in rush hour, then the Comcast billboard that will remind you that when you get home, at least your broadband Wi-Fi will not have significant delays. And then for Jell-O, we were able to connect positive feelings from eating Jell-O pudding by combining out-of-home and social. So this was done in New York, and it was a pudding meter. And the Jell-O Twitter feed had emoticons that were either happy or sad. And the face on the board would change based on consumer response through the brand's Twitter feed. So again, a great combination of digital, out-of-home, and social. And then lastly, for our craft Lunchables, we could again take advantage of the happy moments or happy feeling of eating the product, but they were promoting this real fruit message. And so they had a photo booth in Times Square that people could have this fruit-enhanced photo op experience, and they did it in other markets with storefronts, interactive storefronts, and freestanding pods. And then for each photo that was submitted that way, Lunchables donated to that particular state's food bank. Again, using outdoor to connect mood and receptivity and impact. And I believe there were 90,000 photos that were submitted through this way, so it was a pretty powerful campaign. And that is all I have, so I deliberately left time for questions, if you have any questions for me. The panel is 5,000 consumers for the PACE study, the touchpoint study, and then it is fused with GFK MRI so that we can look at a much larger, which allows us a much larger sample size that we can then deep dive into.
Hi there. I'm a great believer in touchpoints, having been the sponsor in the United Kingdom when it was incepted. But I was interested in one of your examples. You were talking about outdoor from the perception of in-car. What's your general definition of out-of-home? Because clearly we can have the right mood and touch point at more places than just in-car.
So under out-of-home, we have billboards and transit and street furniture and one other that I'm forgetting. And you can actually break it down because people actually all of those are included. I didn't break it down here, but so when I used in-car, I believe when the campaign was looking to reach people in car, it was more about their ability to see the billboards while they were in the car, as opposed to something in the car itself.
Minutes like the old Touchpoints model was. Are you able to do day parting for out of home, and are you putting all this information into any kind of reach and frequency influence?
Sorry, are we using it for day parting? Is that the question?
Yeah, so digital out of home, are you directing any of the digital providers to give it to you by day part for the emotional connection? And then are you able to use any of this data to sort of impact?
Yeah, I'm not the buyer, so I'm not going to, I believe the answer is yes. Certainly in terms of using digital out of home in selected time periods that match with the consumer emotion that we know is prevalent at that time period. Any other questions? Thank you very much.